What's up? I hope everyone is having a tremendously happy, enjoyable, and delightful day. Today, I want to talk about something that's involved history. It's not ancient history because these particular people, they was around from 700 AD roughly to I believe 1100 AD. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Moorish people and their influence on European history. Alright, so I got the information I'm reading to you is coming directly from an internet website. I'm going to read you 15 facts about the Moorish people. So I'm sure if these are 15 facts, these facts have probably been heavily researched. It's not just coming from me. 15 facts about the Moorish people. If you want to check out the article on the internet, technically it's called 15 Things You Did Not Know About the Moors of Spain. So the European country they heavily influenced was Spain. Fact number 1. The Spanish occupation by the Moors began in 711 AD when an African army, again, an African army under their leader Taqi ibn Ziyad crossed the Strait of Jabal from northern Africa, northern Africa, and it invaded the Iberian Peninsula and Andalus, Spain under the Visigoths. So, fact 1, it said they came from Africa. They came from North Africa. Take the facts. You know how the African people look, so you have an idea how the Moorish people look. North Africa, where the Moors came from. Fact number 2. A European scholar sympathetic to the Spaniards remembered the conquest in this way. So it's coming from a European scholar, allegedly, who was sympathetic to the Spanish people. This is what he said. A. The reigns of the Moors. Horses were as fire, their faces black as pitch. Their eyes shone like burning candles. Their horses were swift as leopards, and the riders fiercer than a wolf in sheepfold at night. The noble Goths, he said, the noble Goths, the German rulers of Spain, to whom Roderick belonged, were broken in an hour, quicker than the tongue can tell. O luckless Spain. It's quoted from Edward Scobie, The Moors and the Portugal's Global Expansion and Golden Age of the Moor, Ed Ivan van Sertima, U.S. Transaction Publishers, 1992, page 336. So you see right there, ladies and gentlemen, the Moors were fierce warriors. Those African people, remember they came from North Africa, subdued the Spain quickly. So they was fierce warriors who knew how to ride horses, who it said their faces was black as pitch. So you know how they look. Right there. How the Moors look by this Spanish sympathizer. I gave him his name when I read the item number 2. Alright. Number 3. The Moors, who ruled Spain for 800 years, introduced new scientific techniques to Europe, such as astrolabe, a device for measuring the position of stars and planets, scientific progress in astronomy, chemistry, physics, mathematics, geography, and philosophy flourished in Moorish Spain. So you see, those Moors who had faces black as pitch introduced the Europeans to many forms of scientific, many forms of philosophy and mental inquiry. Those Moors, people who we never hear about today. And sad to say, most countries in the world, especially where I live at here in the United States, and I'm sure most European countries, we do not appreciate history. We do not. I don't care what your ethnic group when you live in that country, Asian, Hispanic, Filipino, Black, American Indian, Asian Indian. We are not grounded in history, world history, specifically in the United States. Number 4, Basil Davidson, one of the most noted historians, recognized and declared that there were no lands at that time, the 8th century, more admired by its neighbors or more comfortable to live in than a rich African civilization which took shape in Spain. So we see African civilization, according to this historian, was advanced. It brought many benefits to European Spain. Like I said, we don't hear about that. We don't hear nothing about that. Never. Number 5, at its height, Cordoba, the heart of Moorish territory in Spain, was the most modern city in Europe. The streets were well paved, with raised sidewalks for pedestrians. During the night, 10 miles of streets were well illuminated by lamps. This was hundreds of years before there was a paved street in Paris or a street lamp in London. Cordoba had 900 public baths. We are told that a poor Moor would go without bread rather than soap. So the Moors, they love having a clean body. If you know anything about Europe in that time, you knew how they treated their bodies. According to the conclusion, the Moors had great respect for being clean. They introduced raised pavements, which is all over the world today, to the European world. In Europe at that time, there was no raised pavements for pedestrians to walk on. Everyone was either walking in the mud or in the grass. Number 6, the Great Mosque of Cordoba is still one of the architectural wonders of the world, in spite of later Spanish disfigurements. Its low scarlet and gold roof, supported by 1,000 columns of marble, jasper, and porphyry, was lit by thousands of brass and silver lamps, which burned perfumed oil, not just regular old lamp oil, oil which had a rich smelling scent to it. Now I'm sorry, I apologize for the background noise. Here in the United States, it's the 4th of July. So again, if you hear things stuff banging off, blowing up, there's not no bombs in my neighborhood. It's just people celebrating the 4th of July holiday. They're celebrating pretty early. Alright, number 7. Education was universal in Moorish Spain, available to all, while in Christian Europe, 99% of the population was illiterate, and even kings could neither read nor write. At that time, Europe had only 2 universities. The Moors had 17 great universities. These were located in Almeria, Cordoba, Granada, Jaén, Malaga, Seville, and Toledo. Again, stuff we never hear about. How the Moors introduced much to Spain and European society. We don't hear things like that. We don't hear stuff like that. So the next one is number 8. In the 10th and 11th centuries, public libraries in Europe were non-existent, while Moorish Spain could boast of more than 70, of which one in Cordoba housed 600,000 manuscripts. So at that time, the 8th century, Europe basically had no libraries. Those Moors introduced libraries to Europe. 8th century, Europe was a backwater region of the world. Had no power, no prominence. These North African Moors who has existed decades, hundreds of years before the Europe, was a truly civilized culture. Number 9. Over 4,000 Arabic words and Arabic devised phrases have been absorbed into the Spanish language. Words beginning with al, for example, are derived from the Arabic. Arabic words such as algebra, alcohol, chemistry, nadir, alkaline, and cipher entered the language. Even words such as checkmate, influenza, typhoon, orange, and cable can be traced back to Arabic origins. And I believe the Muslim religion, and hold up, it is, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, now one word in here is talking about the Muslims. So I'm just going to leave them out the picture. It's talking about Arabic. So Muslims and Arabic are 2 different things. So this North African Arabic, and we know the Arabic and Africa, they extend back to thousands of years. 8th century BC, 8th century AD, Europe couldn't do nothing. You remember, when I read number 1, the first item, we saw how quickly the Moors took over Spain. It took over in a heartbeat. Number 10, the most significant Moorish musician was known as Zarzab, the Black Bird. Okay, there's again, the Black Bird, a famous musician who arrived in Spain in 822. The Moors introduced earliest version of several instruments, including the lute or el-ard, the guitar or kiara, and the lyre. Zarzab changed the style of eating by breaking meals into separate courses, beginning with soup and ending with desserts. So they even introduced to Europe the different types of meals we have. You know, in typical Western society, we have technically 3 meals a day: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. From this excerpt that I read, the Moors introduced such things to the Europeans? The Moors. They introduced numerous musical instruments. Numerous musical instruments. And remember, the musician was called the Blackbird. How many people will call themselves a blackbird? How did this man have to look to be called Blackbird? Number 11, ladies and gentlemen, the Moors introduced paper to Europe. It didn't say to Spain. They introduced paper to Europe. And arithmetic numerals, which replaced the clumsy Roman system. And you know the Arabic numerals: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then they start repeating. Without those numbers, will we have our computers today? And we know, and you all seen, if you look, since I'm here in America, our favorite sport is called the NFL, or technically the National Football League. Every Super Bowl used those Roman numeral letters, and we see how clumsy those letters are. Without those arithmetic numerals introduced by the North African people, would we have the society we live in today with all this technology all around us? Would computers have been able to handle those arithmetic numerals easily? Something for you to think about. Number 12. The Moors introduced many new crops, including the orange, lemon, peach, apricot, fig, sugar cane, dates, ginger, and pomegranates, as well as saffron, sugar cane, cotton, silk, and rice, which remain some of Spain's main products today. We see on and on and on the historical impact these Moors had on the Spanish European society. Number 13. The Moorish ruler lived in sumptuous palaces, while the monarchs of Germany, France, and England dwelt in big barns. You got that again? The Moors lived in fantastic, celestial looking palaces. The Europeans from Germany, France, and England dwelt in barns. We don't see that today. Every time we see something from the European history on television, they make it seem like they live in huge and large with a big castle. 8th century, they didn't live in no castle. They probably lived in a little shack. Dwelt in big barns with no windows and no chimneys, and with only a hole in the roof for the exit of smoke. One such Moorish palace, Al-Habra, literally the red one, in Granada, is one of Spain's architectural masterpieces. Alhambra was the seat of Muslim rulers. Now it's talking about Muslim rulers from the 13th century to the end of the 15th century. So it's not all the way back there in the BC era. Like most people like to talk about Egypt. Egypt. They lived in the BC era. These Moors lived in the AD time frame. That's who I'm going to brag about. The people who was more recent. The Alhambra is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Well, it's UNESCO. UNESCO. Number 14, my good people, it was through Africa. Okay, here we go. It's Africa. Remember, most historians say, what came from Africa? Africa didn't give us anything. And when they say Africa, they meant the whole continent. We already know these Moors came from Africa. But if we look at a lot of books, historical things, they say Africa didn't give nothing to the world. Now we see, what have the Africans given to the world? So number 14 again. It was through Africa that the new knowledge of China, India, and Arabia reached Europe. So Africans told the Europeans about China, India, and Arabia. The Moors brought the compass. Okay, here we go. Because every time we see something on television about European history, it's definitely after 800 AD. It may be like 15 AD, 16, 17, 18. They never show European history in the hundreds. 900, 500, 400, 100 AD. They never do that. Every time we see European history on television, it's like from the 16th century on up. So all of that knowledge that we see that Europe had from the 15th century on up had a big part from those Moors who introduced their concepts to Spain, which spread throughout Europe. And one thing we know from the technological age that we live in right now, ladies and gentlemen, knowledge spread. Knowledge is a good cancer. I give it that. Knowledge is a good cancer. When one person learns something, they give it to somebody else. That person learns something, they give it to two people. That person who learns something, the new person who learns something, give it to four. It's exponential. So knowledge is exponential. And last but not least, item 15. The Moors ruled and occupied Lisbon and the rest of the country until well into the 12th century. So they ruled from 700, 800, 900, 1000, 1100 to 1200. They were finally defeated and driven out by the force of King Alfonso Henriques. I know I said his name wrong. The scene of this battle was the Castello di Sor Giorgio, or the Castle of St. George. So eventually the Europeans drove out the Moors. But you remember, they was there for a little more than 500 years. And imagine what can happen in 500 years. And America is not where I live at. It's not even 300 years old. Not even, I don't believe it's 300 years old. If it is, I know it's not no 500 years old. So imagine what the Moors accomplished in all those years there. We've seen, if you live in the Western world, how society has changed within a matter of hundreds of years like that. So thank you for stopping by, ladies and gentlemen, to learn about the historical Moors. If you like the content that was presented to you, please give me a like. If you would like to subscribe to hear about things I find interesting, please subscribe. You all have a wonderful, peaceable, and loving day. Ugh.